Have you ever found a book that has changed your life? Well, that's exactly what happened to me when I found those books thanks to Booktube. So today, we're gonna see 14 books that in one way or another changed my life, especially one of them made me start this Booktube journey. And let me know down below if you're able to see which one of those books is. And let's start with a top 3, which in some way are honorable mentions because I will go through them slightly more faster because I've discussed them a little bit more in this channel. And we'll of course begin with Sword of Kagan by Emil Wong. This is the first book that has really made me cry in my life, and thanks to this compelling story I am now in love both with the standalones, with books that are fairly character driven and mainly that have a little bit of drama. In here we'll have a feudal Japanese setting that it's almost blended with some technology elements. This is a self-published book and it is honestly so outstanding. We will talk about this family called the Matsudas, and they are the last resource in order to avoid an invasion, and something happened and they will need to step up. There are great action scenes, an incredible elemental magic that is based on ice.
And you cried your eyes out with this book, right?
Yes, I absolutely did.
I remember that. You woke me up at night, crying, and wanted to hug me.
Yes, bear in mind that it's fairly emotional. Another favorite, it's Jade City. This is gaining so much momentum right now in Booktube that I'm sure that you've already seen this book around. But what maybe you don't know is that even if you are not really into the urban fantasies or even into the idea that this is a Godfather kind of a story, this is truly phenomenal. The character work, it's outstanding. It's a book that will blend martial arts, a little bit of magic, but there's also going to be lots of politics, incredible twists and turns, savage scenes, and really moments where you won't know what to do, what to feel. You would want to keep reading because you want to discover what is happening, but not because you're liking what is happening. And this will mainly follow this city that has the control of the Jade, and Jade allows certain people to have special powers. Therefore, there are different bands fighting, and we're going to see the story of the siblings of one of these bands.
Hooray! The characters are grey, are savage, and they are not good or bad, right? Same as me.
Absolutely agree. All of these characters are nuanced, and you won't have that feeling of there are goods or bad ones here. It changed my life because now I know that I can also like urban fantasies as long as they are as good as this one. And last within this bucket of honorable mentions, we have The Aurelian Cycle by Rosaria Munda. This is a book that even if I've discussed it no end in this channel, it is not as popular as the rest of the books that I've just mentioned, at least in Booktube. And I cannot understand why. It is political, it has dragons, we have incredible complex dynamics of the characters, and there's a story that will feature different points of view that has stakes that are incredibly high. And to me, it changed my life because I've never connected as much with one of the characters as I did with Annie. And she is one of the main points of view that we see here. This is a complex story that follows the aftermath of a revolution and that places the story in a Platonian society where things are not even as good as should be. And we will follow two characters that are fighting for the control of the dragons, of the dragon fleet, and there's a little bit of a trial vibes, but there's a potential revolution that it's emerging, and the story unfolds from there.
Ooh, this sounds really good. I like dragons.
I know, me too, and if you like them as well, you should not miss this. And now let's move to the proper list, those books that I've mentioned maybe a little bit less within this channel, but that I also believe that are incredible. The first one is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. This is the beginning of a trilogy called The Winnowing Flame, and it's a high fantasy that will bring elements from sci-fi, a little bit of horror. You will see a little bit also of a blend of magic with almost technology. There are different points of view, a massive story with different races, a mystery at its core, and it changed my life because this is the first book that I read via audio.
And tell them that it's not necessarily the best book to start via audio.
It is not, because it is fairly slow, and especially book one, you don't know much about what's happening. You need to learn lots of things, but nonetheless, I really enjoyed the experience and I was super hooked to these pages. We will follow the premise that in this land, every now and then, there are different wars called reigns. The elves were the ones that were fighting these wars, and almost everyone has died, and therefore now no one really remembers who are these enemies or how to defeat them. This is one of the favorites from Elliot Brooks, and I discovered it thanks to her, and I cannot be more grateful. Then we move to a young adult duology with A Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and this changed my life because thanks to this one, I started reading heavily again, and it really made COVID way better for me. It was such a discovery. It was recommended by Jananine. It is a story that is written in a way that it's lyrical, but it's not yet purple. It's beautiful, but it's easy to get into it, and it's heartbroken at the same time that it's uplifting. So it's a book that it's full of paradoxes, and it has so many good things. At its core is a story about a misfit.
Like I am? Am I a misfit?
Well, yes, like all of us, and we will follow Laszlo. He has all of his life believed in this magical mystery city called Weep, but no one really believes that this city or the magical beings that live there exist. But one day people from Weep come seeking help, and Laszlo will join into this adventure because something really nasty is happening in the city and he will need to help. I like to do things that are nasty. I know you do. I know you do. We continue with Red Rising, which I joined pretty late to this party. I started reading it last year, and I've already concluded the trilogy. It is phenomenal. It is super dramatic. So if you love drama, if you love characters that are complex, that you don't really know what is going to happen, but that you hope for the best, but you don't know what is going to happen, this is the kind of book. It is a dystopian story that will follow a society that it's terribly broken, and they have divided the society based on different colors, different layers, and one of the lowest levels, these red color people will start to infiltrate the golden ones, and he will try to break these people from within. I read this book because Mike, Daniel,
You talk about them as if all of them are your friends, but...
yeah. Well, all of them recommended this book, and I cannot agree more. This is a story that I've savored, that I've already read it with someone really close to me, and that I've enjoyed every moment of it. And now let's keep that dark vibe, but blend it with more politics and religion. An outstanding book. I read already first and second book, and I am obsessed about it. It has changed my life because I did not think that I was gonna be in love with something as dark as this one is, but turns out that I'm absolutely am. It follows these different characters, but especially one of them as she is learning from this man that it's kind of like the police, the executioner of the justice and everything, and he has a special power. He's able to extract the truth from people, and very early on we're gonna see that a murder has happened, that they need to discover what is happening here, but that the stakes are way more higher, and we will get more information about this magic that this person has, that it's also related with the death. It really fascinated me. Book one has this same vibe as the Witcher universe had. Meanwhile, the second one changed this small town, creepy town vibe into more of a city. There's mystery, but the stakes are just so high, and I was so obsessed.
Yes, I remember that every time that I meowed, you were constantly saying that I was using the voice of the Emperor.
Which is basically one of the powers that this character has and that cannot be avoided. Same as my cats. Then we move to Foundryside, or the Founders Trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett. This trilogy I read because of Jessie May. I cannot be thankful enough. I really enjoyed it. This is probably the first book that made me realize that I love books that blend fantasy and sci-fi, and that really opened my mind and how I approach books now. It is phenomenal because it has a high started score. We will follow different points of view, but mainly one of them it's going to be of our girl Sansha, and she has the special ability of being able to sense objects and seeing what these objects think. And in this world, that is an incredible adventure because people has discovered how to inscribe objects and therefore command them to do stuff. So there's a little bit of a blend of a technology plus magic, and it's magic, it's considered almost as an intellectual property. There are different houses that are really secretive about whatever they discover, and I really enjoyed that vending of the genre. Also, it has a sentient key that it was hilarious. It has great balance between a character and but also a plot driven, a fast paced story. It just had so many things that I really enjoyed. Next we have Legends and Letters, which is basically the book that made me realize that cozy fantasy is a thing. That is a thing that I really enjoyed. I adored the low stakes of this book, meanwhile keeping a plot that I really wanted to read. It's a story about an ogre that wants to leave behind her life as, a killer, and she has a dream now and she wants to open a coffee shop, and the story is gonna mainly follow her doing and fulfilling that dream. But we will follow lots of different moments, different characters that are joining this adventure, and it's just gonna be cozy, it's gonna be comfy, and it's gonna be the type of read that is just happy. It made me realize that not all of my fantasy books need to be as intense as Sanderson.
But you love Sanderson.
I do, but this is a good book if you want to read between more dense or long series. And then we move to the book that made me realize that young adult can also be great, and I read this thanks to Carrie, and I am obsessed, and that is Legendborn by Tracy Dean. This is a book that will surprise you because it has different types of magic blended. It is at its core an Arthurian mythology retelling, and this book really changed my life because it helped me cope with a situation that it was really hard, especially the second time that I read this book, and it mainly talks about grief, and I thought it was done in a way that was so well crafted, especially when you are considering that this is a young adult story, and that usually tends to lean a little bit more younger. But mainly we will follow this girl that is joining university, and she will realize that there's this secret society called Legendborn where the descendants of the King Arthur live, and she will soon discover that there are different magical mystery creatures that are within that university that are evil, and she will find herself a place here. There's a fairly amount of drama and of pining and of slow burn.
Ooh, I love pining and slow burns. Those are my favorite tropes. I love them.
I also really enjoyed it, and I thought it was done really good here. And then we go to one of my favorites of all time, and that is Piranesi. I saw Piranesi in so many different places, and I honestly did not think that this was for me. All of the times that this was pitched, I was like, meh, this is not necessarily something that I enjoyed, but it's so haunting, so dark. It is very complex to describe, but at the same time, it just has a fascinating touch to it. Once you start reading, you are surrounded by magic, by naivete, by a pretty unique writing style, and there's a mystery that our main character Piranesi needs to unravel. And the great thing about this book is that it is mesmerizing while being also really low on magic, so it's very accessible.
Oh, cool. Then can we consider Piranesi as a good book to start reading fantasy?
Yes, absolutely. And we continue with another favorite, which is Black Sun. And thanks to this book, I can now say that I enjoy stories that blend fantasy with politics, with religion. And particularly in this story, we'll have something that it's deeply political, but that it manages to be super unique. It is set in the pre-Columbian American civilization, and I've never read something as savage at times as cunning, and that at the same time had the stakes as high. The plot moved super fast and I was absolutely obsessed and hooked to these pages. We follow different points of view here, but one of them is convinced that he is a god and he needs to do something in this solstice that it's coming. There's different types of magic here and a beginning that you will never ever forget. And almost getting into the end, and the last young adult book that we'll see, it's in this case is standalone with Ace of Spades. And this changed me because it made me realize that I can also enjoy young adult fiction, in this case something that blends a little bit of horror. We'll have two different points of view in this incredible story that will talk about race, about mystery, about injustices, and also about being a teenager. We will follow these two characters that are starting a new course, and very soon after we will discover that the secrets of these two characters are being unveiled for everyone. And it is super weird because they are the only black students in this school. This is therefore super suspicious, and this is the perfect child of Gossip Girl and Get Out, the movie. I read this book also because of Carrie, and it's one of those books that I almost read in one sitting. And last but not least, we have City of Brass. This is loved by so many people, and really I'm just starting with this story, just read the first book, but the setting, how the story is told, the characters, how unforgettable they are, and the stakes are so high. It tells the story of this girl that will find this gene, and together they will start this quest going into the city of the gene. And this story will be the perfect blend of something that has great adventure, politics that are unforgettable, characters that are really charismatic. All of them are very different. There are those characters that are really sharp, others that are fairly sweet, and there's a little bit also of romance here, but you really cannot see where the story is going. This is 100% the beginning of me reading more of these kind of Middle East inspired books, right? And these are the best books that I read thanks to Booktube. Let me know what are those that you've read. Let's share it. Sharing is caring, and I hope to see you soon.